Hey guys, I'm getting a lot of emails from people wanting to point out that evidently some of the friends of Christopher Watts and his wife have been speaking out. And there's one comment in particular that I want to share with you. Not the whole thing, it's really long. But the person who posted it said that she actually majored in psychology and theology. So I thought that was pretty cool. There's somebody who is close to the case who actually has some training and education that would help her connect the dots, if you will, about the behaviors that we're looking at leading up to the tragedy. But she said something in one of her comments. She was talking about how unfair it is the way the people are being attacked. And I agree, of course. Obviously, I would agree with that because they're attacking me too. And they have been for a very long time. It's really interesting and not surprising at all to hear that they're claiming they're being paid. Go figure. But she was standing up for Christopher Watts' mom when she said this. She said that she is simply saying that Christopher Watts' wife didn't always treat people very nicely. She isn't even talking about the CPS case that Christopher Watts' wife had been facing before this. Their court date was only days after the murder. If she had no respect for her, she would be plastering that case all over social media. And she isn't doing that. And then she said Christopher Watts' wife had a few disorders that were difficult to deal with. And if you speak to some of the people who were really around them, you would see her in a different light. So were there two cases at the time? Because I know they were due in court for the unpaid HOA dues. And think about that. Think about that. She's on her videos saying how successful she was. Yet, what, over a year had passed and they weren't able to afford something like $54 a month for the HOA dues. And when it was brought to her attention, i.e. a court filing, a notice of hearing, you're due in court, you're being sued, when it was brought to her attention, she said, oh, I must have been sending it to the wrong address all this time, right? Well, then sit down and send it to the right address because obviously the correct address would have been on the court filing, right? That case with the HOA, that was a major symptom, you guys, a major symptom. I don't think she was making any money at all. I think she was spending her husband's earnings to buy product to make it appear as if she actually was quote unquote working. And I think that secret was either already just found out by her husband or it was about to be found out by her husband. And not only by her husband, but by all of the people who believed that she was really something special with all of those products she was buying. But the CPS case is even more daunting. If you look at the house of cards we're talking about, right? I mean, the financials are obvious. There were 3 months that year that the house payment wasn't even made. Where did all of that money go, right? But the CPS case, that would have been the catalyst to the desperate tone to her messages leading up to the tragedy. If she was due in court on a CPS case, was that when she was going to find out whether or not the family plan was going to be continued? And then in the middle of it all, her husband's going to leave her? Do you know what happens in a divorce when children are considered to be at risk of harm from one of the parents? They order what's called supervised visits. So if there was a CPS case, which I think it is absolutely reasonable to believe there was based on everything we've been shown and everything we've been told, and if she was due in court in just a few days, the woman who posted this comment says that she and her husband were friends of Christopher Watts and his wife. If she was due in court in just a few days, and if her husband was leaving her, and if, remember when she tried to buy hair care products, her credit card was declined, that would mean she was out of money and she was about to lose her income stream named Christopher. The house was in jeopardy, obviously. You can't ignore your HOA dues. There's a little fine print in the promissory note that says, yeah, you're going to pay your taxes and any HOA dues that are going on. That bank could have accelerated the payoff. So the house was in jeopardy, not that they had any equity anyway, but the house was in jeopardy. Custody of her children, visitation were both in jeopardy. Her income stream was walking out that door. Just imagine what that next video would have been. Well, just imagine what the next order for products would have been. Because you got to be able to pay for them. And if you can't pay for them, you got to be able to have a credit card that can. I hope that more of their friends speak out. I hope that more of their friends recognize that the attacks that have been going on against so many of us for simply discussing this case and for simply giving a shit that two little girls were murdered in their home by one of their parents. That's what we're talking about. We want to know what happened to poor little Bella and Cece. And with all of the details of this case that we've seen, I think it's absolutely reasonable to believe that Christopher Watts was telling the truth when he said that he did not murder his children. I want you to think also about how desperate his wife was sounding. She said that she cried herself to sleep for the last week. You've seen the photos. Not at all the perky, excited, woohoo, happy-dappy persona. The photos showed that she was in pain. They showed that she was severely depressed. They showed that she was feeling desperate. And in those text messages, she said she didn't want the baby. In those text messages, she said she can't do it alone with 3 kids. In fact, in my opinion, I think the family plan mandated that she couldn't do it alone with 3 kids. I think the girls had to be in daycare. And I think the only reason that anybody was knocking on the door that morning to find out where she was because the girls were not in daycare. I'm glad that their friends are starting to speak out. I think it's really good for his family if their friends speak out even more, because his family have been treated like crap. And so have I, by the way, and so have many of us who have been discussing the truths in this case. Don't stand by and watch innocent people being attacked by the gang stalking thugs. Don't just stand by and watch it. Speak up. Take a look at that interview, that video of the good friends who would have known them probably better than any of their other friends. The one where the husband said he didn't believe that her illnesses were physical. We need Christopher Watts and his wife's friends to speak up and to be real, to be honest, and to recognize that nobody is bashing anybody. What we care about is that 2 little girls lost their lives. 2 little girls were murdered. 2 little girls who deserved to be safe were murdered by the person who they should have been able to have trusted the most. If we ignore all of the clues and the warning flags and the hints of the pending disaster, the clues were all right there. She asked her husband if he would stay with her if they didn't have children. She said to her, I don't know what to call her, friend, that the girls had to be in daycare the next morning. She said that she had a play date scheduled for the next day with her other 2 daughters. She said that she was supposedly spotting. Really? Somebody who loves running to the doctor? And she was spotting and she didn't run right to the doctor? The clues were all right there. The storm was brewing, for sure. The tornado was coming right on down the highway, right toward them. And if we sit around and go, oh, he's a monster and she's an angel, then we are ignoring the opportunity to learn from this case how to help other children be safe in their own home.